Scene script. Have you ever wondered how the enduring Israel-Palestine conflict influences global economics? This isn't just a battle of borders and beliefs, it's also a struggle with significant economic repercussions, resonating beyond the confines of the Middle East. The conflict, with roots reaching back to the late 19th century, has been a constant factor shaping the economic landscape of the region. It has directly affected the economies of Israel and Palestine, of course, but its impact has also rippled out, influencing the global economy in ways we might not immediately recognize. From the fluctuating oil prices to the shifts in international trade patterns, from the strain on humanitarian aid budgets to the investments in defense sectors worldwide, the economic implications of this conflict have been far-reaching and multifaceted. So, let's pull back the curtain on this complex issue. Join us as we delve into the chronological economic impacts of this ongoing conflict. We'll uncover how this turbulence in the Middle East has left its mark on the world's economic stage. The year 1948 marked the start of the Israel-Palestine conflict, and with it, significant economic repercussions. In the immediate aftermath of the conflict's outbreak, the region's economy was severely disrupted. Trade routes that had once flourished were now cut off, blocked by the physical and political barriers that sprang up between the new state of Israel and its neighbors. This sudden severance of economic arteries led to shortages of goods, skyrocketing prices, and widespread uncertainty. Infrastructure, the backbone of any modern economy, suffered devastating blows. Roads, bridges, power plants, and water systems were damaged or destroyed, crippling the region's ability to produce and distribute goods. This destruction further aggravated the economic turmoil, stifling growth and adding to the mounting costs of the conflict. Moreover, the displacement of populations was another significant economic consequence. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were uprooted from their homes and lands, leading to a massive refugee crisis. This mass exodus not only resulted in a tremendous human tragedy, but also led to a significant economic impact. The loss of a productive workforce and the additional burden of providing for the displaced populations strained the already fragile economies of the region. But the economic aftermath of 1948 wasn't confined to the immediate region. The international community responded with economic aid in an attempt to stabilize the situation. However, this aid came with its own set of challenges. While it provided much-needed relief and support, it also created a dependence that would shape the economic landscape of the region for years to come. In short, the economic aftermath of 1948 was a complex web of disruptions, destruction, displacement, and dependence. The conflict that began in that fateful year touched every aspect of the economy, from the domestic to the international, from the immediate to the long-term. The economic shockwaves of 1948 set the tone for the decades to come. The seeds of economic instability and dependence sown in that year would germinate and grow, shaping the course of the region's economy in ways that are still evident today. As the conflict persisted, so did its economic impacts. The middle years of the Israel-Palestine conflict were a time of economic instability and dependence for both nations. The economies of both Israel and Palestine were deeply affected, causing ripples that reached far beyond their borders. Israel's economy experienced a roller coaster ride of ups and downs. On one hand, there was a boom in certain sectors like technology and defense. On the other, the constant state of conflict and the heavy expenditure on security led to a high fiscal deficit and inflation. The situation in Palestine was even more precarious. With limited resources, the Palestinian economy was heavily dependent on international aid and Israeli trade. The restrictions on movement and access to resources imposed by the conflict severely curtailed economic activity. Unemployment soared and poverty levels rose. The economic instability in the region didn't just affect Israel and Palestine, it also had far-reaching implications for their relations with other countries. For Israel, the need to finance its defense spending led to a close relationship with the United States, which provided significant military aid. Palestine, on the other hand, found itself largely dependent on international aid. Countries around the world, including those in the Arab League, the European Union, and others, provided financial assistance. This aid was critical in keeping the Palestinian economy afloat, but it also created a dependency that was hard to break. The economic instability and dependence also had wider geopolitical implications. Countries providing aid or trade often had their own agendas and interests, further complicating the dynamics of the conflict. But perhaps the most significant impact was the way the economic instability fed back into the conflict itself. The economic hardships faced by ordinary Israelis and Palestinians only served to exacerbate tensions and deepen divisions, making the prospect of a peaceful resolution even more distant. The economic instability and dependence of this period further complicated the conflict. In the age of globalization, the economic ramifications of the Israel-Palestine conflict have become increasingly intertwined with the world economy. As we delve deeper into this issue, it becomes clear that this conflict is not confined within the physical boundaries of Israel and Palestine. It reverberates around the globe, affecting international trade, investment, and aid. Let's start with trade. The conflict has led to a significant disruption in trade routes, particularly in the Middle East. Countries that once relied on these routes have had to find alternatives, often at a higher cost. This not only puts a strain on their economies but also affects the global supply chain, leading to price fluctuations and market instability. Next, we move on to investments. The constant state of unrest in the region makes it a high-risk zone, deterring potential investors. This lack of investment stunts economic growth not just in Israel and Palestine, but also in neighboring countries that rely on them for trade and commerce. Furthermore, the ripple effect of this economic slowdown can be felt globally, as it influences the performance of international corporations and stock markets. Lastly, let's touch on aid. The conflict has resulted in a significant amount of international aid being directed towards the region. While this aid is critical in alleviating the immediate humanitarian crisis, it also means that resources are being diverted from other pressing issues around the world. This imbalance in aid distribution can exacerbate economic inequalities and hinder global efforts towards sustainable development. In essence, the economic consequences of the Israel-Palestine conflict are far-reaching and complex. They permeate through the layers of our globalized world, influencing economies and markets in ways we may not always foresee. This conflict, though geographically confined, has economic implications that are truly global in scope. As we see, the economic impacts of the Israel-Palestine conflict extend far beyond its borders. The Israel-Palestine conflict has shaped the economies of not only the two nations involved, but also of the world. This ripple effect extends far beyond the borders of these two nations, influencing the global economic landscape in profound ways. Let's take a step back and reflect on the major points we've covered so far. In the aftermath of the pivotal year of 1948, the economic landscape of Israel and Palestine underwent a dramatic transformation. The ensuing instability and dependence have had far-reaching implications, not just for the two nations, but for the global economy as well. The conflict has led to an increase in defense spending by both Israel and Palestine, diverting valuable resources from other sectors. This has a domino effect on the global economy. When resources are channeled into warfare, it means less investment in infrastructure, education, and healthcare, which can stifle economic growth and development. Moreover, the instability created by the conflict can deter foreign investment. Investors in general prefer stable environments where their investments are less likely to be compromised by political unrest or violence. This means that the conflict can indirectly affect the economies of countries that could otherwise be potential investors. On the flip side, the conflict also leads to an increase in international aid, especially towards Palestine. This results in an economic effect where countries, particularly in the West, allocate part of their budget towards aid packages, which could have been used elsewhere. Furthermore, the conflict affects the global oil market. Middle Eastern countries possess a significant portion of the world's oil reserves. Any instability in the region can lead to fluctuations in oil prices, impacting economies worldwide. Lastly, the conflict has implications for global trade. Trade routes, particularly those involving the Mediterranean Sea, can be affected by the ongoing conflict, impacting the flow of goods and commodities around the world. Understanding these economic impacts allows us to better comprehend the complex nature of the Israel-Palestine conflict and its far-reaching effects. The intertwining of economics and politics makes this a multifaceted issue, with implications that reverberate across the globe.